Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stars and Pearls. I'm so happy that you tuned in and that you're here to join me in this really important talk that I'm going to be having with Curtrice. And I'm so happy Curtrice is here to join us today. Curtrice, thank you so much for joining me on my platform with this message that you have, which I find is amazingly important. Do you mind introducing yourself? I feel like that's always the
Yes, wonderful.
easiest
And
way.
thank you. It's an honor to be here. Such a deep honor to be here and have the opportunity to share and gather and be in community around this topic. My name is Curtrice Goddard, and I am a racial justice educator, a speaker, personal development coach. Those are my current hats that I'm wearing. My background consists of traditional naturopathic medicine, herbalism, energy work, EFT, trauma healing. We know all the things, right?
Yeah.
Which has led me to here. But currently, my work is working with at the intersection of spirituality and racial healing.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I have to explain to you guys, I do have a little bit of, sometimes I get these internet glitches here where I am. So please don't mind if it freezes or anything. Don't panic. I'll
I'll be
return.
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get that out of the way. But Curtrice, so what is
Yes.
your mission now? Like, what
Mm.
is your
My mission is liberation,
Mhm.
liberation for all of humanity. That is why I was born. That's why I've come in. And with that, on my spiritual journey, it's all been about my personal liberation, right? How can I disconnect myself from cords and programming and be as free and empowered as I can be as a human being? And with racism here on the planet, I started receiving this awareness and these downloads of how it is one of the biggest unconscious energies that is impacting the liberation of all of humanity, not just Black and brown folks, but everyone. It is an energy that has had the impact of disempowering people, people moving in shadow, averting their eyes, running, fighting, grasping to identities and all these things in the world. So to heal this, to evolve in this conversation, it brings about our own personal evolution, which is a true sustainable evolution for our collective consciousness for the world. So yes, liberation. That's the impact.
Awesome. You mentioned something before with what you just
Mhm.
said that it impacts those that are um being racist as well. How would you say it impacts them? Because they seem to be the ones gaining power through it, right? I mean, that's the
Mm.
surface level view, but how does it?
Right. It is the surface level view. So
Mhm.
those, well, we know. So when I look at the different aspects or degrees that it can appear in people and organizations. So you have those that are in the deep disconnection energy, that's disconnected from their true self, that's in unconscious energy. They're in unconscious energy density. So those are people in overt racism, like doing harmful things. I would like to say that they are in a different sector altogether, right? When you are really tuned out of your body and you're harming others and harming yourself, right? Are we really talking about racism at this point? They're also not a great father, a great neighbor, right?
Mhm.
That it isn't isolated to racism, right? That's a deeper problem. And but when we talk about the other part of the collective, which are people who are holding the conditioning within them, those also are people who aren't fully living in the true state of the full self, right? Like if your heart or you have biases and you are separating yourself from God, you're separating yourself from love, right? You're not fully embracing and living life in what I consider living a well life. So what's coming through right now is we look at, like, let's just say the white community, people in white bodies, people in white presenting bodies. There's always been this thought of like they're in power and they're privileged, and which is there's an economic privilege. There's a privilege of skin color that keeps you alive that may not be the same for someone of color. But if you look close enough, I don't see wealth. I might see money, resources, but I don't see joy. I don't see, there's not a tune in there. The white community is not a healthy community, right?
Mm.
What it is a community that has a narrative out there that we are healthy. But if you go a little deeper, you will find that there's a lot of people that are struggling within that community. And white supremacy and the patriarchy is at the root of what those struggles are. That meaning it can show up in ways of a lot of people are on medication. They don't feel connected to themselves. They're not in a deep, full heart connection and soul connection with who they are walking through the world. There's an emptiness, there's a stoicness, there's a disconnection from emotions. But we're under this patriarchy and this capitalism society that says, well, if you have more than I am, you are doing better, right? You have the power. But do you really have the power? Or do you really have the power? When I look at it, it's a type of power I would not want, right? I always tell people I am one of the wealthiest people that I know. And that is because I am mentally and emotionally healthy, right? And so I have my own values, which allows me to walk empowered through this world and also make impact in this world because I'm not beating myself up. I'm not eating your narratives. My values are my own, right? And so having this understanding, you start to break down like what we consider the people that are in power and get, and doing well, they're actually not doing well. That's why racial healing and racial, like dissolving racism within yourself, if you are in a white body or white presenting, will also free you, right? Yeah. It will also bring your voice out, your power, your knowing of yourself. You'll see within yourself all the things that you have given over to whiteness that has taken you from your own power and what am I saying? Like your true lineage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is true that I've heard that as well, that it doesn't just break down the societies that those people or those groups that you attack in the society. It breaks down, eventually it erodes all of it. All of it.
All of
it all
it.
comes back to everyone. How did you get into this? Like, how did you move from because we met years ago and you were doing something amazing then, but this is like, wow.
Yes,
This
yeah,
is really
it was
cool, really good.
inevitable for me. It's inevitable for me. I feel I have a lot of friends that are in white bodies. I like to say it that way, so you just kind of help us remember that everybody is human. A lot of friends that are in white bodies, being in the spiritual community, being in LA, like being around, and it has really helped me to heal. It's helped me to see. It's really brought this work in like just a firebomb, right? I was like, how can I not talk to what I'm seeing here, which is this construct of racism is actually just separation consciousness. Like there is no differences between us, but we have these identities and these beliefs. So it just kind of came naturally for me to speak to it because I would see initiatives out there and I was instantly came to me. I'm like, okay, so you have initiatives, we have all these things happening in the practical world, but if the people aren't changing at a level of consciousness, we aren't really changing. Like this isn't sustainable change. It's not regenerative change. If you have a diversity and inclusion initiative in your business, but yet in your heart and your mind and your perceptions are still of separation consciousness, are still that this group of people is this way, where I'm not equal to them, right? We're still holding that consciousness in the field, and it can be felt, and it will erode. It will erode. Eventually, it does. So I want to go beyond initiatives. I want to go beyond performing, even though a lot of it I believe is well intended. People are doing the best they have, they can with what they have. But you must change at your level of consciousness. And that means starting to look at some of the conditioning that you were born with. I love to say this to people because a lot of people feel if they're nice.
Yes, but I'm
they're
nice.
Not, yeah, I'm not
I have no bad
racist, but
intentions,
I
and
don't
I
know.
don't mean it that way.
I don't mean it right. So it's so interesting. Like I don't know anyone who was born into this global society that has not received the messaging and conditioning of Black and brown skin being subhuman and inferior. That is a deep, deep, deep conditioning. Yeah. And like I said, it shows up at interesting points. I want to share why it's so important. This story is coming up for me right now. It was a young boy who was in a suburb, a young Black boy was in a suburb, and he was to pick up his younger siblings. He was a celloist. He was picking them up from like an after school. They had went to an after school event and then went to a friend's house. So he goes to pick them up. He's at the wrong door. It's like 8 p.m. at night, and an older white man sees him on the porch, tells him to leave. He's still trying to knock, like looking for this kid. He's like 14, 15 years old. And so the older man ends up, he shoots the guy in the head, the little boy in the head.
I read
You
about
read
that.
that?
Yeah.
And that to me is why when people say, why are we talking about racism? Everything's fine. Like, you guys can do what you want to do. It's fine, right? You know, like, you just, can we just get over it? And
Yeah.
this is why it's so important. Like, no one should take a bullet to the brain because we aren't talking about these things. Like, how many people in his family has known he is racist? No, he also has other things that are going unchecked, right? That's why I said, you know, doing anti-racism work will grow you up, right?
Yeah.
It would make you a powerful, transparent human being because you have to speak to your fathers, your uncles, your brothers, your aunts, whoever that is in your space, and start to call them into right relations with themselves, with you, and with other people. And that's pivotal to the health of our society.
Right.
Yeah.
That ties in with patriarchy as well, that people, men have to call each other accountable. Women should be holding
Yes.
each other accountable.
Yes.
Whoa,
Yes.
whoa,
Absolutely.
whoa.
Absolutely. It's
And you
really
do feel
important.
that this programming is global, that it doesn't matter where you do this, you're gonna, I have found, like, because I travel, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gotten to the point where I have looked at the world map with my friends and I asked them, where can we go as Black people without issues? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, even going back to Africa, I've heard stories of people having issues. So,
It's, yeah, yeah, it's
so
deep. Yeah, I believe it's global, and of course the consciousnesses are different, right? You know, America
yeah.
has its thing, and we have this very heavy traumatized post in slavery energy in the field and colonization. Like, so there's a lot of resentment and a lot of healing that needs to happen. What we
Mhm.
don't need to do is smooth over it, but yeah, it's a global conditioning of white supremacy. What is right is white, and that comes through just tons of media and the way things are set up. Like, what I feel is coming in right now is this invitation for nobility and transparency, to see each other as human and tell the stories honestly, right?
Yes.
I always tell people, like, who do you think, you know, what group of people does drugs?
Mhm.
For me, that Black people came to my mind when I first, but I'm like, is that true?
Is
When
that
I
true?
have when I have 1.5 million friends and white friends, and they all have done drugs, and some
Yeah.
some still do. But that story, that narrative. So I watch my own internal racism, right? What was told to me as a child, as I grew up, even though I'm living amongst Black people, I'm still receiving this narrative that this is who we are, even if I'm not experiencing that in my own community.
Yes.
Right. Like, for instance, that's not my story, but that's who I've been told that I am.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah,
Right.
it's important to start to break down white supremacy so that we can all be free of that conditioning and think for ourselves.
How do you go about introducing this to people that are, as you say, in white bodies, so that they understand the trauma that's inflicted and the
Mm,
feelings that are, like, how, because I do believe that I don't want to contribute to the separation consciousness, in the
yes.
sense of saying, but so I do honestly believe, and I grew up in a country that is predominantly white. I grew up in Germany, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and the experience here is different, but it still has its challenges, but it's different
Yes, yes.
than, for example, in the US. And
Mm-hmm.
especially because I grew up with nobody else. I was the only Black
Mm-hmm.
girl in my school. I was the only Black girl in my village. So everybody knew where I lived and who I was, and, my family and my history and all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say that I had a necessarily negative experience, though, even though it was a standout experience.
Yes.
I experienced more negativity once I got to the US, and especially Canada, right? But that's a
Mm.
whole other,
Right.
yeah. But how would I, for example, go about explaining to people here that don't have that mindset of, that awareness that they have in the US that would say to me, yeah, but we're not Americans. We don't have that stuff here, you know? How
Yeah.
can I get them to open up to this level of thinking? Like, how do you go about that?
Hmm. So far, people seek me out, so that's a
Mhm.
big piece of it, right? And I think so. It's two things I heard you ask, like how do you present it to people, and then like for people outside of America who feels that they don't have anything to do with that, they're of a different consciousness.
Yes.
And like I said, as we began, that if you have white skin, you have a messaging about your skin. We have a messaging about ours, right?
Yeah.
We've not been in control of this messaging, right? These are
Right.
definitely seeds, psychic seeds and cords that are implanting. So even if you're not American, I've even been, actually, I was interviewed by a woman from Germany a couple of years ago, and she saw it prevalent in her community as well, because it's
Mhm.
held there. It may be quiet. You may
Yes.
not be a tyrant,
Yes.
right? But what I like to offer people, the first thing with racism and in relation with people in white bodies is that, always approaching that there is no condemnation
Mhm.
here. Like we are, this is what I hope, and it's like what I like to invite people in. We know that what the historical context have been, what has happened globally to people of color. We know that in each community, whether you're Indian or Mexican and Puerto Rican, like the darker skin is vilified, right? Is the demonized. Okay. So if we all understand this historical context, I feel like this is a global conversation. We're not asking you if you have racial conditioning. We know you do. And we all want to come to the table ready to explore this without you coming being the villain and I am the victim. I want
Yes.
us to come equally, right? And look at like, okay, this is what's been going on. What do we need to do to heal? And
Mhm.
who do we need to become so that we create a new narrative, that we actually get this mission, this opportunity. This is an opportunity to do anti-racism work, this
Mhm.
opportunity to actually start to create new trajectories and new paths forward. We are here to evolve our bloodlines. White
Mhm.
people are here to evolve their bloodlines,
Mhm.
their consciousness, the constructs, the ideas of how your bloodline has been moving through the world. Black and brown people are here to do the same. It's a reckoning for white people, then a reclamation. For Black and brown people, we are in the reclaiming of ourselves. Before white people go to reclaim, they are moving through an awakening and a reckoning, and it should be honorable, right?
Mhm.
And I want them to see them empowered through that journey, right? And it won't be easy. I always say create safe spaces for white people too, because they are unraveling right now, and they will further move into that if they can come into safe healing spaces where they can be heard and they can be guided and they can be facilitated. So this is why it's such a big opportunity for our human evolution, because for us to step into it from that perspective, then we have to come into it and oneness consciousness. Like for me as a Black woman to sit and say, I'm going to hold space for your healing because you are me, because we need each other, because this is a collective forward movement, that means that I've done enough work to separate myself and remember why I'm here, right? And come in and actually be a healing balm and a door, a portal for something new.
Right.
It's
That's,
powerful.
yeah. So I have two questions.
Yes.
I don't know which one I want to ask first. So because I love this. I love
Mhm.
how you tie it in also with the evolution of consciousness, right?
Yes, yes.
And how does spirituality and racism itself tie in for you?
It's 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 so pivotal. When I think about racism, at the core of it is inferiority. It is the power over other. It is rooted in survival. And survival is the primal mind. In order for me to live, right? I'll take yours. I can't eat. When there were famines, like, so you're moving through these primal instincts, right? And that's how it's been. So it's always been about who has power, who's better, who has more money, how to get more, how to stay on top, right? Very primal. But we as humans, we're not just our flesh. We are not just our minds and our identities. We are spirits having a human experience. So how can we talk about this without talking about our spiritual nature? When
Mhm.
people tell me, and they tell me this all the time in different subjects and conversations, Curtrice, that's just primal. That is just the primal mind. And I always say, what about your transcendent mind? Right? What about the God of me? Right? Before I kill your family and take your food or kill you and eat you and all the things that's happened historically, because I am in this knowing of my total self, I'm just going to lay down and go to sleep and go back to source. That is where I am in my evolution. And so I must teach this, that it's not always to get. It's on, you don't have to move through survival energy all the time. And I'm saying this as a little girl who was born in poverty to a mother on welfare with 3 kids who was definitely in survival mode. Even now,
Mhm.
my mother being 70 years old, I present these aspects and teachings to her, and to see her free herself with all that conditioning, triggers small, and a piece of mail will come to the house and she'll just freeze, like
Yeah.
it's something she doesn't understand, or she have enough money, and I keep moving through her, like, Mom, remember your total self, right? Remember that you are abundant, that you don't have to drop back into that space and then approach this. So it's a powerful medicine, and it's very healing. And that is how spirituality connects into racism, because without it, we are only fighting over things, position, economic power, our identities. And for me, I have not seen the level of change that I've wanted to see, right? I'm like, wait, it's time to actually start to disassemble these dynamics. Right. It's time. I'm done with oppressor and oppressed. Right. I'm moving out of that. You're right. Watch how you hold me. Don't sympathize with me as a person of color. Right. See my equality. Know my power. Don't invite me to
That's,
speak in your class unless
yeah.
you know that I'm bringing you full value. Right. That you could not find anywhere else. So this is the important part, to bring in the exploration of your spiritual nature, because without it, if we are only our minds and our bodies, we will suffer,
Mhm.
right? Doesn't Christ say, I think he was coming out of the forest after the 40-day fast, and they said the devil tempted him, and he said, man cannot live by bread
Alone.
alone.
Yeah.
So what else is there,
Yes.
right? May we not suffer our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it, you nailed it. Like I always say, I don't want to be the special kid on the bus. Like that's not what I want. That everybody's tiptoeing around me because like
Right.
I want everybody to get it.
Yes.
Just to get it. We're all on this bus together. And
Yes.
this is,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel the purpose of racism is from the spiritual point of view? And I know that you channel a lot of what your work as well, so we're going to
Mhm.
get into that too. Just,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yes. It's unconditional love, right? It's the greatest level of mastery,
Mhm.
opportunity for mastery, if you ask me. And not everybody's going to be a master in this lifetime, right? But it is this energy existing in our world is not an invitation for us to fight. I think we all know that. So what is it? I always ask people, sit with that. What has racism come to teach you? What triggers does it bring up for you? Right? What pieces of you? What are you feeling defensive of, mad at? Like what is coming up? And then you empower yourself. And I feel this deeply because I have rage around things that has happened to people, to my people, right? On this planet, period. Like if you're not walking softly on this earth, I become enraged. And I have ways of working with my rage in a sacred way that leads me back to the divine. It leads me back to my empowerment. It leads me back to my why and my mission, so that I can actually walk through the world in a healed space. So it has taught me how to be the most empowered version of myself. Like as a Black woman, I have 2 roads I can go down with this narrative. to what my family, you know, and I still see it. I really just, I kind of want to say that so deeply because I still see the echoes of slavery in my family in current day, rather living in suburbs or driving nice cars, having a job. It comes out the mouth. It's in the way the heart is guarded. It's the violence. It's the power over. It's sometimes the way we speak with our children. Like you see it, and at this level of consciousness, I can just see the slave that consciousness, right? Plus, their blood is in our, you know, the bloodlines are mixed as well. So it's very interesting to see that, but the purpose has come. It's an invitation for me to know myself as the divine in a deep place, and a knowing so great that no one can take from me, right? I am the most empowered version of myself now, and I know I will always grow, is because I was born in a Black body. I wouldn't change it for anything, for nothing. For nothing. It's the greatest honor.
Yes.
It is the greatest honor to show myself that no matter what shows up, I can always find myself. I always love. I can always cultivate that. I can find joy no matter the circumstances. I will not suffer this life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel the energy when you speak, and my heart just goes, wow.
And may all humans know that, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I'm feeling like the energy that you're dealing with is powerful. It is transformative. When did this start coming through you? Because you told me that the work that you do now, because you work with groups at schools, I believe, that some of it is channeled, right? That you're
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of it, right? Some of these things I'm now remembering because they'll come through in a channel. Then I'll be able to respond in different interviews and classes. Now that the information has come to me, but I get these downloads at 3 a.m. My like I woke up, it was like white America's healing. Like who's helping white America heal? I'm like, what? So it just starts to come through, and it always is coming from such a deep, divine love. Right, it's so much deeper than my personality. It's just powerful, and it brings me back to humanity, that we're not separate. And even with that, and this is a big teaching and something I work with in classes, is you can speak to the things that enrage you, that have hurt you. You can hold people accountable, invite them into right relations, and you can do that with the heart open, or with the intention of opening the heart. Sometimes people think when we are holding compassion for transgressors, or a space that is neutral and safe, that we're letting them get away with things, right? That's kind of like a societal construct and idea. Like when somebody does something bad, you condemn them, they're bad, they're horrible, let's unalive them, right? That's kind of like, that's how you get back at people. Right. But now for racism, the invitation is about seeing and knowing yourself as all of humanity, and then doing the work within yourself that you're able to hold spaces for people that is an invitation to their own personal evolution and meeting you. People have to heal in order to actually give you anything. I remember there was something going, like in 2020, people were mad, like spiritual white women, like, you're not saying enough, you're not doing enough. And I was thinking, or white women in general, it was beyond the spiritual community. And I was like, look at how racism can take you back to where you really need to find your power. There's a lot that women in white bodies don't speak to, right? The patriarchy is heavy in the white community, the father, the husbands. So if they're not speaking up for the transgressions that's happening to them in their own home, how are they going to speak up for us? So you see why their work is their work, right? That they have to become these empowered women, because if you start to speak to racism, you have to look at where your voice became muted anyway, right? I have a video out there now that I've had a lot of engagement on, and it's saying like racism will lead you to speaking up to your fathers, to your grandfathers, to all the things that the white woman has not felt empowered to do because of the system of patriarchy. And this is powerful. This is what racism leads you to look at where you too are being held down and suppressed through white supremacy. White supremacy is your quietness. I always say the white community is a very hush-hush community,
Yeah.
right? I'm in the healing community, and I know so many things that has happened to people I love and in events and circles that I've been in. And these are things that they're not allowed to speak to. But when you go to the ethnic groups, and of course it's a generalization, because we've not had those same standards to be perfect, that we're raw, we're louder. I come from a family that throws frying pans at the man. Like, that has been liberating. It has been liberating. So it has helped with my voice. Let's just say that. So moving through that is really powerful. So I always say that anti-racism work isn't just for the other, it is for your own self-empowerment, your own personal evolution. And that's how you know something is good or something is right, quote unquote, because it's serving all. It's a beneficial and benevolent energy.
Right. Do
Yes.
you know where you're channeling this information from? Or
Well,
are
I
you allowed to speak
connect.
about it? I don't know.
Wow, Carly. Well,
I don't know. Like sometimes some
yeah,
channelers are like,
my connection is Christ consciousness.
okay.
I relate to the consciousness of the Christ, the
Mhm.
ascendant. Yeah, that he's a master that I feel I've walked with for a long time.
A long time.
I get him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
So what do you feel is an underlying need underneath the racism? I mean, you
Mm,
just went into it a little bit, for example, with our sisters in white bodies who have this need to step up to the
yes.
patriarchy, actually, and their
Yes.
whole genetics, ancestral line, and what they went through,
Mm-hmm.
which has also been hush-hushed for many.
Yes. Yes.
But generally speaking, also for the men, what's the underlying need here? Like, why do they need this in their soul journey to be a perpetrator,
Oh,
you know?
they need it so deeply.
Mm,
They need it so deeply. Through the patriarchal systems, this projection to men to be providers and their value, which is held in how much, they take care of, they protect, and what they have. And love or emotional intelligence, joy and fulfillment, men, it's almost, it hasn't been rightful for them to even seek those things. But they're
mhm.
human beings, right? These are somebody once was little boys, right? So when you look at the constructs of how men walk through the world to be in power, have you ever heard a man tell you, I don't feel so powerful today? You won't ever hear that.
Oh,
That's not
yeah.
allowed, right? So it brings them back to their humanity, that they are more than just a provider. They are more than just money or power and their statuses. And so it gets to the root of changing our value systems, which actually has breeded capitalism, the patriarchy, and
Mhm.
white supremacy, because the value is in what you have, right? And that is, like I said, that is not wealth or joy. And I think we all at this point in life have had experiences that show us that even when we obtain that thing outside of us, it doesn't give us the fulfillment. Like the journey is continuing, that the greatest fulfillment is knowing thyself, is loving thyself, is feeling whole, is having connection and community. So as you move through that and start to identify differently, you're no longer just your status in the world or the job you hold or how much you can provide. You cannot provide it as a man and still know that you are valuable. If that happens, if they still know their value without providing, if they know that there's more to their presence, that they are divine beings as well, that their presence, their love, their emotional intelligence is something that we value as a society, then they don't have to continue to let that energy, that entity of needing to have power over or always be in power,
Mhm.
right? So to me, it eats away at their humanity. And as they work through that, then it moves. Okay. So as they work through that, it comes through to them actually, all of us, but them actually settling into the energy of truth, which is
Mhm.
abundance.
Mhm.
There's always enough,
Enough.
right? That means
Yeah.
that other people can rise next to you.
Mhm.
Other communities can also have right? Because if you're always trying to provide and be on top, and you have a fear that somebody else may be higher than you or take from you, it brings out that energy, that primal energy again. But when we shift our values as a society and start to know ourselves as more than just this body and our status and these things, then we start to evolve. Now I know I am more, I'm a vaster human than I thought myself to be. And what I value isn't just money. It
Mm.
isn't just money, right? Money, right? When you think of the incarceration system where people are still legally slaves at today, oh, this is about money, how they can make more money. I want to share with you too, off this riff, is I had this pendant from Sedona. It's a vintage Navajo piece, and it was mined by the Detroit Mining Company. And so I looked it up the other night and seen who owned it, and it was two white men. And the founder in particular in the 1800s, they shared that he was paying the Mexican miners less than the white miners. Okay, we know that now. And he went a step further. Well, he started to pay the Mexicans a type of faux currency that they could only buy things in his stores. And I just thought about that psyche, like, you won't pay them. Now you're paying them and routing the money right back to you. That need for all that power is coming from fear and not knowing the true self, right? It's a very deep aspect. I seen it was about love, but it was a white guy explaining that romantic love was something made up by poor men. I don't know,
Wow.
something in the 1800s, because they couldn't compete. And so they would make up this story that love was a thing for women to seek because that is all they had. And it was actually scary for me to see a man in a white body speak like that
Yeah.
about love when
Yeah.
we are love.
Yeah.
Right. So that goes to show that mentality and
Yeah.
how that mentality shows up in our world and why the power over other and that dominance and that superiority is needed, because it's being fed from lack and primal desire and just blatant darkness to the whole self, right? The spiritual self.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, do you see this ever? Do you have a vision of a time or a planet where we're all just at peace with one another?
Will we have a utopia? I
Yeah.
don't, I don't, I don't think we will ever have that. I believe the contrast is necessary.
Mhm.
I do feel that we will have more harmony, more tools, more information on how to heal ourselves, how to interact. I do see a multicultural consciousness rising in the global world. And I see a lot of mixing of people. I think bloodlines at one point will
Yes.
be so mixed up that, obvious separation will not be so easy. But I do feel that we are out of the dark ages. And I know you know that as a spiritual
Mhm.
woman as well, that there's a shift upon the planet. And I believe in generations to come that the world we live in today will be no longer. I do see a value and like a right relations and an equality coming in, a true equality coming into the consciousness on the planet. And I think
Right.
these children are holding those codes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with internalized racism? How do you because that
Yeah.
was you mentioned that early in our talk
Yeah.
where people have heard this messaging so many times that they've internalized it themselves. And the first thing that you think about when people ask you who's a drug dealer, or
Yeah.
you immediately think of your own people, even though that's not the
That's not true.
case at
No.
all, at
No.
all,
No.
at
No.
all.
It's not. Yeah. And
It's
oh,
kind of like that image that people used to have, and it might be crude, but it was a crude image that Black women are sexual animals. And
mhm.
most of the Black women I know are so far from that. They're monogamous, they're one person only. They started late in their church. You know what I mean? They're very careful about who they open up to. I mean, I don't know. Those are
Yes.
the ones I know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And because I'm writing this in my book, I've been celibate for 12 years. So that's just kind of
Here
like
we are.
right, so here we are. Right. That's so funny. Really, I'm like, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and how we're perceived, in the media and the music. I was teaching a class the other day, and I was talking about some rappers that you would consider conscious rappers that the world will never hear of because there's
Yeah.
no money pumped into those
Okay. Yes.
narratives, right? You'll
Yeah.
never know that, you know, there's other aspects of the community. It's just very interesting in that,
You
but
bring that up, and I remember reading an article a while ago saying that Black rappers that sing about drugs, sex, and violence, that they would never get successful if they only had a Black audience. The numbers wouldn't be in that
right.
they were actually way back in the day, many of them were pushed or even created to cater to a white audience because these men wanted to break out. They wanted that feeling of wildness and freedom and
Mm-hmm.
things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. And that
Yes.
actually was built to a white audience and not to a Black audience. That blew
Yes.
my mind when I read that
Yes.
article. I thought, wow,
Yeah. And it's part of the
wow.
awakening that's really beautiful. And I'll send this to you as well. Is there's a couple of rappers, I know there's two that are now coming out speaking and saying that these are the things they were told to do in order to get like
Mhm.
bonuses. And they had to specifically rap about guns and drugs and specific things.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and they were like, they decided to opt out. And so now their career is moving to being like more speakers and sharing this truth that they are poisoning the community, not only the community, but also feeding into the stereotypes and keeping this construct of racism
Mhm.
going, right? That it's
Yeah.
so deep how a lot of people think race, you'll hear people actually say that they don't think it exists. But it's
Mhm.
now because it's implanted within the psyche of the people and
Yeah.
within the things that we're seeing, it's constantly being watered and fed, right? And so we have to really get in here. Like you said, the question was, how do you deal with internal racism? And it's that awareness, right? It's that awareness coming in. I always kind of feel, within myself when things show up, I have this awareness like, wait a minute, like, where's that thought actually coming from? Like, is this really true? Asking questions, but awarenesses. And I think classes and platforms are pivotal right now because a lot of people are living life as it just is, right? I
Yeah.
said something to a Black girl in an Uber the other day about how beautiful she was. And I was like, it's just so amazing to be Black and be mel and all this. And she was like, is it? And I was like, yeah, like
Oh.
like
Oh.
but she's in different world, and I will say this, and it may seem extreme for some people, but it's my truth. A lot of where my healing happened is I disconnected from this world. I
Mhm.
took time away. I stopped letting them feed me. I created my own narratives, right? I started to reprogram myself with type of content and frequencies that reminded me of my power, that I am an aspect of God and all that there is. That is what I inundated myself with. I made my programming system just as vast and robust as the society.
Wow. Wow. Curtrice, it's amazing. It's amazing. And you're working, how old are the kids that you're working with?
These are adults.
Oh, sorry, the inner children. Okay.
The inner children. These are actually leaders, healers, as well. And it's been powerful. Working with them. It is every class is such a alchemical process that is happening within, and just us being from different races and just allowing everything to come up has just been so deeply transformative and healing.
That's amazing. Because
Yeah.
in our short interview on Instagram, you did bring up a situation where this person said to you that he's triggered. He's triggered.
Yes.
He doesn't know why, he doesn't want it, but he's triggered.
Yes.
And due to that and creating that space, somebody else came to me that watched that. And she said the same thing. She said, you know what? I'm definitely not in that category. I'm not over there. But for some reason, it triggers me.
Yeah.
But she's, we've been working together for years. So it's like, I know she's
Mm.
not that. And she had
Mm-hmm.
that space through you opening the door,
Yes.
She had that
Yes.
space to be able to step in and say, yeah,
I
it
feel
does trigger me
triggered.
and I don't know why and I want it gone.
and I want it gone.
Yeah.
And that is such a powerful piece. Yes. And it's interesting. Like we all have our roles and our work before us to do, but people in white bodies right now, I mean, it's a pivotal, powerful point
Mhm.
that they are at to ask these questions like, what is this trigger? Did I share with you? I was at a friend's gathering in California, and I met a woman who happened to be a white woman, her and her husband, and we were talking, having this beautiful conversation, and we started talking about race. And she said to me, she said, I was at home and someone had an accident and kind of tumbled over and died on the side of a road. And she said, I was concerned and I stopped to look at the TV. She said, when she found out that it was a Mexican man, she said, I felt that I held the value of his life as lesser. I was not as concerned anymore. And when she said to her husband, looked at her like, did you just say that to her? And when she said that, I just grabbed her hand and we just squoze each other. Me and that woman, and we're like this close to each other that night, like talking. And I just held her. She started to cry and like having that space where there was no condemnation, that
Mhm.
I didn't say, oh, how dare you? And look at that. Like I felt so honored that she felt safe to share that so that we can unravel and look at her heart and start to move deeper into how do you start to excavate these narratives and these perceptions that you've been fed since you were a child and start to move into seeing the humanity in all. She had to share that raw truth in a safe space in order for us to move through that. And it was powerful. It actually brought us closer than it would if she had never spoken that
Okay.
and was to be very nice.
Yes. Yeah. Very
Yeah.
true. Very
Yeah,
true.
it's powerful.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm learning from you how to, because I've had the thoughts, but I haven't taken the action, if you know what I mean, right? Where I was thinking, this has to be brought to a different level. This has to, like, we have to start having a different
Mm-hmm.
conversation here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then here we are, right?
Yeah.
And I find your work is so amazing, and
Mm,
it
thank
should
you.
be. I feel like corporations need this,
Yes.
anything that is multinational, that has to do with a lot of people working together. There has to be a new level of understanding reached, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that'll catapult our world into a new consciousness level. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
however I can support you, I am
Thank
here. I
you.
don't know how I
Thank
can
you.
support you from here, but I want to.
Thank
And
you.
I am
Thank you.
totally, yeah, yeah.
That is the vision. I kept, when the information was starting to come down to me, I was seeing like, oh, this has to be a conscious shift.
Mhm.
Right. And so many people don't want to talk about racial justice or
Yeah,
social justice
yeah.
because it hasn't evolved. And a lot of people have reached out like, I've been waiting for you. I've been
Mhm.
waiting for you. And I'm like, it's a pivotal time
Yeah.
because it must evolve. It's time, all the energy. And thank you for that offering. Because it's taken me years. Like I always share with people, I feel like I'm telling you all my secrets because I've been aware, but the world hasn't been ready. And that's been difficult for me
Yes.
to right, just be
Bring the
patient and
Yeah, because I was feeling like this whole finger pointing, blaming, and back and forth. It's not going anywhere. Okay,
yes,
everybody knows racism is bad. Okay, how do we move on from that?
right. How do we right?
What next now?
How
So
do we
it's
heal?
yeah,
How do we
this is
dissolve?
this is I think it's amazing. Curtrice, thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much for
you.
taking the time today and sharing. And how can people reach you?
They can reach me on my website, which is my first and last name, curtricegoddard.com. I have a Transcendent Social Justice 4-week experience, like an incubator coming out on March 19th. So that
Mhm.
is a way to engage further, but you can also email me there and subscribe to my list for all the offerings. I'll be traveling. I want to go to different places and share the curriculum in real life too. I feel like, in-person containers will be really
That
powerful.
would be amazing. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah. We're working on that.
yes, yes, yes. Stay tuned.
And
Yes,
because I think also that there is no true healing if this doesn't happen. If this kind of healing, if people don't dive into it,
yes,
reprogram themselves from what they've been programmed to believe, it's on a cultural level, because we've all understood the personal level, we've understood the
Yes.
family conditionings, but now it's time to move into the cultural conditionings. And I'm finding in my work, for you, it's probably different, but that's where people kind of dig in their heels a little bit more, because they don't recognize it as conditioning even, you know? So it's
Yes.
like, this
Mm.
is just right from wrong, Carlene. And I'm like, okay. But
That's more. Yes, and I'm like, okay.
you know,
Yes.
so
Yes. Yes.
they see it as that, as they don't realize it's a social conditioning, a cultural conditioning concept. And
Yes.
this is part of the ancestral healing. You know, if you're going
Yes.
to go back and try to heal the alcoholism in their family, you're going to try and heal all these other things in your
Yes.
family. You can't leave racism untouched. You can't leave this separation consciousness unaware.
I can't believe you said that. I've been saying that too. I Someone shared with me that there's like in the spiritual community, people saying they don't identify with being white, they're non something. I can't even think of what the word is. So like a trend that is arising in the group. And that came to me, and I was thinking, well, if you were empowered, you own your white body, you honor your white body and the work that is before you, right? So I kind of, I'm not resonating with that, although I know you're a multidimensional being. Also, we also incarnated in these bodies. Like there's a sacred responsibility here. And when you say that, that came to my mind as well. Like if you're doing your inner child healing, you're going back to 4 years old and 9 years old, how do you just completely ignore the racial conditioning that's also in your bloodline communities and within a society? That was,
Yeah.
you just literally, that's just something I lately that I've been writing about with a piece with the spiritual community, because I think the spiritual community has a hard time with how much we feel we should interact with these third dimensional
Yes.
constructs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. They
And
want to
so,
float above it and fly away, but that's not how it works.
right,
Uh,
right. And right, that's not that. And I always think like if you're a shaman, the shamans walk through the dark. So let's really get into our power here and be able to, I feel like we should have more capabilities and empowerment to actually go into the 3D and not get lost there. That's
yeah.
where I am in my own journey. Right. So yeah. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited,
Yeah.
Curtrice, to
Yeah.
work with you. I know that we're going to
Thank
do
you.
fantastic things, but you're going to do
Yes.
fantastic things on your own, and you already are. And I'm super proud to be
Thank
connected,
you. Me too. Me
to
too.
know
Thank
you,
you.
yeah, I'm super happy. Speechless,
Thank you.
absolutely speechless.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor seeing it all, like the momentum happening and so many people showing up. And it is my intention to always be a practitioner, create safe space and just get raw, get in there and to actually help us all evolve. So it's an honor to be able to share here. Thank you, sister.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well,
Yes.
thank you for being here. Thank you for doing
Yes.
this interview with me. And
Yes.
I hope to have you back at some point.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Sending love to all. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
guys for tuning in.